According to the saga of Hercules, he landed 9 ships on the coast, along which today you'll find Barcelona. 8 ships went down. The 9th ship, in Latin Barcanona, reached dry land. From Barcanona came Barcelona. So much for the legend. Around 1000 BC, the city started growing from a small group of Iberian settlements to the metropolis of millions that it has become today. Next to Madrid, Spain's second largest city is also the capital of Catalonia. With the Mediterranean on one side, the city unfolds like a chessboard to the surrounding hills on the other. Its historical center is relatively small. A good starting place for your tour of Barna, as the Barcelonians call their home, is the 60-meter-high Columbus Column, a landmark of the city. In 1492, Columbus crossed the ocean and discovered America. This event was to change the world and the history of Barcelona. The various influences are enormous. For example, on the Rambla and Flanier Street in the city centre. In the middle of the Rambla, on the street mosaic designed by Joan Miró, jugglers, dancers and other artisans of self-promotion gather, much to the pleasure of their audience. The colourful pavement of Rambla divides the old city from north to south. The 2-kilometre-long street is the throbbing heart of the city. A street of millionaires and beggars, of artists and football fans who celebrate the victories and likewise the defeats of the legendary football club Barcelona FC in the team's nightclub called Barca. Rambla is Arabian and means wild brook. The wild brook flowed along here until the middle of the 19th century. These days, streams of countless people pour down here. In the north of the city is Plaza Catalonia, one of the main squares of Barcelona and the boundary between the old and the new cities. Not until the 20th century did it become so popular with its many cafes and fountains. Café Zurich, opened in 1920, became a meeting place for writers. From here, one comes out onto the Rambla Canalatas. Each of the 5 areas of the Rambla has its own name and speciality. The upper part is quiet and melancholic. Next to that nestles Rambla del Estudis. The Catalonians call it the Rambla of Birds. Canaries, parrots, and other household pets are sold here. The stands and kiosks are identified by their sheet tin parrots. The Rambla de San Josep is also known as the Flower Rambla. Here you'll find lilies, roses, carnations, and other flowers on sale that are grown in the northeast of the city. This was once the favored spot for many painters and poets. Close to the Rambla, La Boqueira, the indoor marketplace, built to resemble the halls of Paris, was finished in 1876. Here housewives, tourists, gourmet chefs and beggars hustle with the regular characters of the Boqueira market. The stands are full of vegetables, fruit, meat, fish and spices. Between the stands, one can have some wine or coffee, or a quick snack of tapas. These are small appetizers that one can order any time in Spain. Situated below the marketplace are the stands of the souvenir sellers. At the southern end of the Rambla, one again comes to the Columbus column. The column was built in 1888 for the occasion of the World Exhibition. At 52 meters high, the viewing platform offers a fabulous view of the harbor. After the discovery of America, the city turned its back on the sea as Spain's trading monopoly was transferred to Seville. Since the Olympic Games of 1992, the city is slowly turning towards the sea once more. With this about-face, Barcelona hopes to break away from Madrid in central New Castile and to rival Seville in Andalusia in the south. Barcelona is trying to gain importance not only as an industrial port, but also as a yachting harbour. Why shouldn't the jet set from Saint-Tropez weigh anchor here too? The customs house makes an imposing backdrop. A round trip of the harbour is not limited to a sightseeing boat. One can also get a wonderful view from one of the cable cars that climb the Montjuic, one of the two hills at the city's edge. The ship museum is situated opposite the main customs building. Formerly the royal shipyards, the Reals Drassanes are unique for their kind and size in Europe. In the 14th century, these were the most important shipyards in the Mediterranean. In these Gothic halls, 30 galleys could be built at once. Today, replica ships, old sea charts and different kinds of fishing boats in their original size are on display. The Real was also built here. In 1571, Don John of Austria led the combined Spanish and Venetian fleet to victory over the Ottoman Turks at the Battle of Lepanto. To commemorate the 400th anniversary of this battle, the flagship was rebuilt in 1971 to its original specifications. The Real reminds us of the Golden Age, when Catalonia ruled the Mediterranean. Through and because of the discovery of America, Barcelona's passage to the New World was cut off, and it lost its predominance to Seville. And now the old shipyards only serve as museums. However, the city has opened itself up to the sea once again. On the Passage de Colombe, between the Columbus Column and D'Antoni Lopez Square, beneath the palms lining the broadly built streets of the Flaneur Mile, the traffic moves slowly past the harbour. Architecturally, the seaward side of the city has been given a modern city accent. The futuristic drawbridges create a contrast to the old facades. To explore the landward side of the city, the ideal starting point is the Rambla. Jugglers, mime artists, painters, musicians, all kinds of curiosities draw attention to themselves. Left and right of the Rambla, one discovers important buildings. Here, for example, the Academy of Science. The sons of aristocrats that studied here gave the Rambla its name. Official time used to be read from the great clock on the facade. After the closing of the Academy, the Poliorama Theatre later resided here. The National Theatre emerged from the successful Catalonian ensemble. And some of the buildings remain from the booming trade of the 19th century. One small shop, dealing in the overseas trade of tobacco, grew to a business with 15,000 employees and became the Compañía General de Tabacos de Filipinas. One of Barcelona's most beautiful buildings is the Palau de la Via Reina. The Spanish viceroy gave it to his wife as a present. These days, the rooms of this Baroque palace are open to the public. In contrast, an Art Nouveau dragon and a colorful umbrella. They decorate the Casa Bruno Quadros, where for decades a business collective canvassed for custom. Nearby is the metro. Barcelona's first metro line was launched in 1924, but it still doesn't come close to the Paris metro on which it was based, with the exception of the design of the main exits. Next to the metro station, Liceu, is the opera house of the same name. The Liceu, built in 1846, is based on the Scala in Milan and is Europe's second largest opera house. In 1893, an anarchist sitting above the 4,000 seats in the Fifth Circle demonstrated against social and class differences. During a performance of William Tell, he threw a bomb into the crowd below. Some people died and many were injured. But it wasn't just this attack that made history on the Opera House. Maria Callas, Margot Fonteyn and Rudolf Nureyev have exhilarated its audiences. Spanish television regularly broadcast important concerts and opera productions. Red velvet, gold-painted balustrade, private boxes with chambres séparées and decorative chandeliers. The Baroque splendor gives the acoustics a festive surrounding, and so concerts become a glittering social occasion. Inside and outside, the Opera House provides the perfect backdrop. The Carré Nou de la Rambla branches off between the Liceu. The architecture for the Palau Güell came from Antoni Gaudí, but only after he had presented his patron, Eusebi Güell, with 25 other designs. Gaudí was the most famous of Spain's Art Nouveau architects and created many fantastic buildings in Barcelona. The Modernisme drew international acclaim. Elements of Art Nouveau embellish bars and businesses. They're the first and favorite choice for a photo on the Rambla. The characters and the flower decoration are beautifully woven together. Mosaic stone, ceramic, and wood were the most popular materials. The only monument on the alley honors Francesc Soler. It stands at the Plaza El Teatre. The poet looks towards the theatre he founded, the Theatre Principal. It counts as one of the most important venues for Catalonian culture in Barcelona. The Rambla de Santa Monica leads away from the theatre, the last and most popular area of Flanier Street. Before going to the harbour, an excursion to Plaza Real is highly recommended. From the Rambla dels Caputins, a small side street leads the way. Once a Capuchin monastery stood here. After it burnt down, the Plaza Real was constructed in its place. With its surrounding arcades, the square mimicked contemporary French design. The shading palms, the fountains and Gaudí's lamps make the square a favorite meeting place. Every Sunday morning, the square becomes a marketplace for stamps and coins. which are bought, bartered, exchanged and expertly scrutinized. As on every Sunday, the Plaza Real seems to belong to the locals, especially in the narrow streets of this Gothic quarter with its almost medieval atmosphere. Through twisting side streets that seem to touch one another, one finally reaches the stock exchange. Built in the 14th century, it was later given this classic facade. The commodity exchange itself can be found in the Great Gothic Hall. It has remained untouched since the alterations of the 18th century. The buildings of the commodity exchange used to house the watchdogs of local trade. It was here that shipping and trading rights were decided. The stock exchange moved in when this institute disappeared in the beginning of the 19th century. Today, it's an important distribution point for goods from the whole of Catalonia and Spain. Close to the stock exchange is the Plaza d'Antonio López. From here, the Via Laietana leads back into the Gothic Quarter. The street was named after the first Roman settlers in Barcelona. It runs parallel to the Rambla. Behind exemplary houses, the Middle Ages appearance of the Gothic Quarter starts. The old town of Barcelona. All day and into the night, musicians use the cathedral in the Gothic Quarter as their stage. In contrast to the Rambla, despite the acoustic accompaniment, the streets here seem quiet, almost peaceful. Old palaces are often found hiding behind the walls of the old Gothic buildings. For example, here in the Casa de l'Arcadia from the 12th century resided the Archdeacon. The building was renovated in the 15th century. Today it is the city archive. A palm tree looms out from the inner courtyard. For a while it also housed the Board of Attorneys. The Art Nouveau architect, Dominique Montanet, created a letterbox from the made of marble. The tortoises characterize the slow processes of justice, and the swift flying birds symbolize the quantity of registered complaints. Along the old Roman city wall, one can still find the remains of Roman settlements. The wall has been partly integrated into the buildings from the Middle Ages. Until the middle of the 19th century, the old town was the residential area of the well-to-do. After the flood of immigrants started, the rich moved to Gothic Quarter in the north. Then the destitute took over the Gothic Quarter, which soon became neglected. Since 1985, the city authorities have been rebuilding this jewel of the city. Apartments have been modernized, facades redecorated, squares redesigned. The square in front of the cathedral is often used as a set for fashion shows and a meeting place for art enthusiasts. It wasn't until 1890 that the main neo-Gothic facade was completed according to the original plans. The interior of the cathedral has 3 naves and 29 side chapels. The relics of the martyr, Santa Eulalia, are kept here. A patron of the city, she was a Christian monastery in the late Roman era of Barcelona. Palms, medlar trees, and a Gothic fountain decorate the garden inside the cloisters, widely acknowledged as being the most beautiful place in the city. The cloisters date from 1448, are not only attractive because of their Gothic elements. The bronze figure of St. George enjoys considerable attention. But the main attractions are the 13 geese in memory of St. Eulalia that have lived in the inner courtyard ever since. The 13 geese stand for the number of years St. Eulalia worked in Barcelona. As they are louder and more defensive than dogs, they were used as a honking alarm system for the church. The cathedral isn't only visited during the day. At night, it's bathed in spotlights, which highlights the precision of the Gothic filigree especially. On Sundays around here, one can hear the music of the sardana floating by and fades away on Plaza Sant Jaume, the political center of the city. It's built on the original forum of the first Roman settlers. The sardana, a Catalonian ritual dance, expresses feelings of community that is perhaps difficult for foreigners to understand. Strangers form a circle holding hands and dance the same traditional steps. The dance demonstrates the pride of being firstly a Catalonian and then a Spaniard. The Plaza Sant Jaume is the political center mostly because of 2 buildings. The Palau de Generalitat, home to the President of the Catalonian government, and its aide-de-camp, City Hall. The Palace of Generals displays the history of a people with its differing national and political directions. The origins of the Palau de Generalitat go back to the authorization of taxing laws by the local Catalonian parliament, Las Corts. This national autonomy symbolized a kind of patron saint for Catalonia, Sant Jordi or St. George. The dragon slayer gave his name to the chapel and this hall. The ceiling and walls of the Jordi rooms show the history of Catalonia. For example, the return of Columbus after his discovery of the New World, and then being received by His Royal Majesty. In the Orange Court, a bronze bust honors the Catalonian president, Lluís Companys. In 1936, he declared from the balcony of the Palau de Generalitat that Franco's military putsch had been defeated. 4 years later, the Franco regime seized power and he was executed. The inner court is mesmerizing through its symbiosis of architecture and nature. Crowned with a sculpted decor, the brickwork lend the orange trees life. The Orange Court is open to the public only on the 23rd of April. The Feast of St. George is celebrated on this day. Opposite the Palau de la Generalitat, bearing the flags of Catalonia, Spain and Barcelona, sits its aide-de-camp, the City Hall. Inside the magnificent Hall of 100, the great city council would meet. In the 13th century, King Jaume I granted Barcelona certain privileges that became the basis for the city's system of self-government. The council members could decide without the need for the king's blessing. Even City Hall is not without the imagery of the city's history, likewise allegories and representations of the Catalonian people and their traditions. From the 16th century gallery of the City Hall, one looks out onto the inner courtyard. It has an atmosphere of sublime serenity. It is an impressive manifestation of Catalonian national pride. The patio and the staircase are decorated exclusively with works by local sculptors. This sculpture was created by the famous Catalonian artist Joan Miró. Only Pablo Picasso achieved greater fame. Undeniably the most influential Spanish artist of the 20th century. Picasso's multifaceted genius can be seen in the museum in the Gothic Quarter. It is located in 3 medieval town palaces. Pablo Ruiz Picasso came to Barcelona with his family in 1895. Here one can see works from his earliest periods. This is an early self-portrait. Picasso was born in 1881 in Malaga. The painting, Science and Charity, demonstrates the artistic maturity of the 16-year-old Picasso. The early works already show Picasso's versatility and pleasure in experimentation. In Paris, he was influenced by the Fauvists and the Pointillists. Later, in his blue and pink periods, his palette became monochrome. The museum also exhibits works of graphic art. For example, the highly expressive etching The Poor Meal from 1904, as well as other works from his time in Paris around the turn of the century. The Old Town by night. Shops in Spain stay open late. Barcelona, neon lit, city of designers. Window dressing aspires to and achieves the status of art. Design is everywhere in Barcelona. Barcelona design is famous all over the world. Dedicated to the first Catalonian president, Francesc Macià, in 1992, this statue lends the Plaza de Catalunya a new flavour. The public square in the north of the Gothic Quarter is one of the largest of the city. Its sculptures are worth a second look, although most people pay them little attention. Hardly anyone realizes that the bronze rider symbolizes the city of Barcelona. The three-masted ship underlies the importance of Barcelona as a harbour city. On the Passeig de Lluís Companys, there is a modernist triumphal arch. In 1888, hundreds of thousands of people strolled through the imposing arch towards the World Exhibition.
Me llaman abandonado, porque no engraso los ejes. Me llaman abandonado, si a mí me gusta que suene, pa' que los quiero engrasar. Si a mí me gusta que suenen, pa' que los quiero engrasar.
The Victory Arch, in the style of the Mudéjar, created in a decorative form free of any angel-like figures. Behind the gate starts a magnificent palm-infested street. Like the Rambla, it entices one down to the Flanier. It borders one of Barcelona's most beautiful parks, the Parc de la Ciutadella. Barcelonians that stroll through here and know their history are proud to be reminded that they are Catalonians. In 1714, the Castilian King Philip V had a garrison built here for 8,000 soldiers. Through internment or execution, the Catalonians were persecuted because during the Spanish Wars of Succession, they supported the Habsburgs.
Es demasiado aburrido seguir y seguir la huella. Es demasiado aburrido seguir y seguir la huella. Andar y andar los caminos sin nada que me entretenga. Andar y andar los caminos, Señor, sin nada que me entretenga.
In 1845, the hated citadel was stormed by the people and in 1869 torn down. 20 years later, the area was turned into an attractive park for the World Exhibition. Around the same time, a building by the Art Nouveau architect Dominique Mantanet was erected that now houses the Zoological Museum. Opposite is an example of the once popular iron and glass architecture. What was previously a greenhouse is now a venue for exhibitions and events.
Tenía, pero hace tiempo, ahora ya no tengo más. Tenía, pero hace tiempo, ahora ya no tengo más.
What do Barcelonians do when they aren't thinking about Catalonian history or not celebrating because Barcelona FC won against their arch rivals Real Madrid? They sit in one of the many restaurants, bars or pubs. In the background one can hear one-armed bandits and television. Here one can eat undisturbed before going back to work. Such restaurants, simple and inexpensive, can be found all over the old town. These ones here on a square that was created as part of the Old Town restoration. To the southwest of the city centre, between Rambla and Plaza de Catalunya, Ciutadella Park and the port, the Montjuïc Quarter is situated on the hill of the same name. On this hill, in 1929, the Second World Exhibition took place in Barcelona. Sports stadiums and cultural institutions were built here, for example the National Palace. The hill, 175 metres in height, has been the scene of Catalonian struggles for independence since the 17th century. In 1640, the Catalonians erected the castle to repel Castilian troops. The Castilian rulers conquered the garrison and used it as an instrument of oppression. At the beginning of the 20th century, countless opponents of the ruling regimes were imprisoned and executed here, most of them under Franco. In 1938, after the Battle of the Ebro, the dictator's army forced its way into Catalonia after 2.5 years of civil war. Barcelona had been shaken by heavy fighting and civil unrest. The streets were strewn with barricades after the proclamation in 1938 of the Republic of Catalonia in Barcelona. Politicians such as Macià and Zamora dominated the scene. Macià's death in December 1933 led to even more bloodshed in the course of the conflict with the central government in Madrid. Luis Companys, who proclaimed an independent Catalonian republic in 1934, could not prevent events from taking their course. He was executed by the Franco regime on the hill of Montjuïc. The hill's bloody history is commemorated by a memorial portraying Sardana dancers. This is the traditional local dance. Catalonia's will to resist is here perpetuated in stone. From the terrace of the Miramar, one enjoys a panoramic view of the docks, the city, and Mount Tibidabo, the second significant hill in Barcelona, which forms the northwestern border of the city. From here, one can see the scale of the still uncompleted Sagrada Família, the city's most famous site. One of Barcelona's most important museums is situated on the Montjuïc, the Joan Miró Foundation. The terraces offer a perfect setting for the artist's colourful sculptures, whose originality never ceases to amaze visitors. The plain backdrop of the museum building, architect Josep Louis Sert, allows the objects to develop to their full effect. Joan Miró, son of a goldsmith and watchmaker, inaugurated the foundation himself in 1971. Miro's works from the years 1971 to 1975 are displayed in the galleries, as well as special exhibitions of contemporary art. From the Fundació Miró, it is only a short distance to the Olympic Stadium, built in 1929 at the same time as the buildings of the World Exhibition. The facades date from this period. The interior was completely refurbished for the Olympic Games in 1992. The stadium is a further example of the traditional coexistence of sport and culture. Besides sporting events, rock concerts also take place here. The gigantic oval holds 65,000 spectators. The Palau Sant Jordi can accommodate 17,000 visitors, the new sports palace beside the stadium. From the Olympic area, the road leads to another attraction, the Spanish Village. Before the World Exhibition, several famous architects traveled through Spain. They recreated the country's most beautiful and typical buildings on a scale of 2:1, thus producing a complete overview in a summary form. Since bars were introduced here, the Spanish Village remains open until the early hours. The last stop on Montjuïc is the Palau Nacional. This monumental building was also created for the World Exhibition. Since 1934, it has played host to the Museum of Catalonian Art. From the Plaza de España, a splendid staircase leads to the museum. Behind the square is Miró Park. The parks were created to provide recreational areas in parts of the city which previously had been densely populated. In Park Miró, the sculpture, Woman and Bird, is well worth seeing. It is one of the landmarks of modern Barcelona. In the northeast, the industrial Parc d'Espanya is of architectural interest. Special features, lighthouse columns and a navigable lake. In contrast to other modern parks, this one quickly gained popular acceptance. For here begin the new, highly populated, high-rise housing estates. People here are grateful for every square meter of grass and any kind of aesthetic stimulation. Between the two mountains northwest of Montjuïc lies modern Barcelona. It is divided diagonally by two main roads, Avinguda Diagonal. Impressions: the young face of a great city. The old and new meet and mingle, a common sight here. Important architects describe Barcelona as an experiment that succeeded. Not just the Olympics helped to refurbish the city and improve its infrastructure. Years previously, careful urban planning had been instigated and implemented assiduously. Even in the diagonal quarter, with its high-rise blocks and office towers, there are shady places in which one can rest and relax. For example, the Park Pedralbes. Most visitors here are drawn to the royal palace. King Alphonse XIII resided here from 1902 to 1931 before fleeing into exile. Nowadays, the palace plays host to a museum of ceramics. The palace was originally the country seat of the textiles magnate Eusebi Güell, who was patron to Spain's most famous Art Nouveau architect, Antoni Gaudí. The modernist gate with the dragon was also created by Gaudí. Art Nouveau, or modernism as it's called in Spain, is reason enough to visit Barcelona. The most extravagant modernist building is the Palau de la Música Catalana. Luis Domènech i Montaner, the second master of the Spanish Art Nouveau, created the Palace of Music for the Catalonian National Choir, l'Orfeó Català. It was completed in 1908. With a capacity of 2,000, it is Barcelona's most important concert hall. The city's symphony orchestra also plays here. Many of the best-known Art Nouveau buildings are close to the Passeig de Gràcia, the splendid boulevard connecting Diagonal and the Old Town. Three architects are mainly responsible for founding and forming modernism: Antoni Gaudí, Luis Domènech i Montaner, and Josep Puig i Cadafal. On this boulevard, the architects built three houses which exemplify their varying attitudes. For example, Casa Leo Morera. For this house, Montaner was awarded Barcelona's annual architecture award in 1905. Today, the Office of Tourism is located in this lavishly decorated city palace. The Morera family having a picnic. The patrons had themselves immortalized in elaborate mosaics and ceramics. They allowed Montaner great freedom in the imaginative design of the details. In a side street, we find one of Montaner's earliest buildings, erected in 1889. Originally a publishing house, it now houses the Antoni Tapies Foundation. The artist crowned the building with his controversial sculpture, Cloud and Chair. Josep Puig i Cadafall designed the Casa Amatier. He turned away from curving lines and floral decorations to geometric forms, as the neo-Gothic gabled construction makes clear. Next door, Antoni Gaudi's Casa Batlló goes to the opposite extreme. The most famous of the three architects was probably the most imaginative. Originality, said Gaudí, consists in going back to the source. This meant returning to the manifold forms of the natural world and their organic structures. His fantastic tenement palaces originally found little acceptance. Which of these three houses is most beautiful is finally a matter of taste. So it's worth investigating the subject of originality. In search of Gaudí. He created the Casa Mila for the family of the same name. It is regarded as the masterpiece among his secular buildings and one of the most interesting sights in the city. The undulating facade is characteristic, and its soft lines are continued on the roof, a feature invisible from street level. This bizarre building was built between 1906 and 1910. Today it is still known as La Pedrera, the quarry. The helmeted chimneys and ventilation shafts on the roof are internationally famous. From here one can see Gaudí's most famous building, the Sagrada Família. World famous, controversial, and never completed. It is Gaudí's life's work and the symbol of Catalonian modernism. Gaudí worked on this church from 1983 until his death in 1926. When he died, he left behind a draft which was destroyed by fire during the Civil War. Only one tower out of an intended total of 18 has been completed. In 1952, after a painstaking reconstruction, work recommenced. Opponents say the greatest sculpture of the 20th century would lose its magic were it ever to be completed. We follow Gaudí's trail up through the Passeig de Gràcia, continuing northwards past the obelisk. A few kilometers after crossing the Diagonal and leaving the Plaza Juan Carlos behind, we arrive at the wholly singular park that Antoni Gaudí bequeathed to the Barcelonians, Parc Güell. Enchanted, magical and playful, encrusted with millions of ceramic fragments. And this is just the entrance to the Parc Güell. Here, this architectural genius turned his vision into reality. Every fountain, every detail is a triumph of imagination. The industrial magnate, Josep Güell, originally intended creating a garden city in the English style. The city's lack of interest, however, meant only 3 houses were completed, as well as the central square with its famous undulating mosaic benches. When Gaudí began work in 1900, there was only a bare mountain here. Gaudí could not realize the plan to construct a garden city with all the necessary infrastructure. Yet what he did achieve is so impressive that in 1984 it was included in UNESCO's World Cultural Heritage List. From the viaduct made of stone, cement and clay tiles, one can enjoy a fine view of the city and the surrounding hills. At 500 meters, Mount Tibidabo is the highest hill. It attracts many visitors, especially at the weekend, to the oldest amusement park in the city. On the summit stands the basilica with the imposing statue of Christ. The vantage point's name makes playful reference to the devil's temptation of Christ. Tibidabo, all this I offer thee.